Hello, everyone. Welcome to eSight Vision Central eSight Training 101. Today on September 29th, 2023. Happy for everyone to join us today on this fall day. I see we have a couple of people coming into the meeting as I speak, which is great. So thank you, everyone, for joining. This should be a fun session, talking about eSight training and just kind of utilizing the eSight a bit more for some different tasks and a variety of things we're going to be going through here. So I see we got more people coming in, which is great. All right, so I'm going to get started here and for our Vision Central event. So first on the end, we're going to look over the agenda here. It's going to be a little bit of introduction, housekeeping, as we always do. And we're going to be learning about eSight training, and then we're going to have some questions. Okay, so just for introduction, this is live, so things might happen. It's going to be for users only. You can raise your hand to ask questions at the end of the program. And to raise your hand on a computer, have a little hand icon appear by your name. To ask questions on a Mac, it's the Option key plus the Y key. And on the PC, it's the Alt plus the Y key. And this session should only take about 30 to 45 minutes. So just to kind of go over some basic foundations with everyone, just general tips for using your eSight. Always want to make sure the eSight device fit and is comfortable. So you want to make sure the fit is right, and that you're comfortable wearing it for a while, especially if you're trying something new. You haven't tried with the eSight. If you're going to manual focus or looking at the different modes, for example, you want to make sure you're seeing the screen properly and everything is comfortable for you. eSight designed to keep you mobile, so always just make sure you use that bioptic tilt when you're moving around, and so you can look underneath with the under the bioptic tilt with the eSight, so you can see with your normal vision. Cable management is also important, and having a good cable management system, help with the longevity of the unit. If you're using an eSight 3, you don't want to necessarily snag the wire. Want to make sure it's tucked behind your shoulder. Or if you're using eSight 4, making sure you have that wrist strap on your battery case, on your remote case, where the battery is, just making sure you don't drop the remote and everything looks good. And also just making sure to have additional batteries on hand or have a good power management process when you're out and about with your eSight. So you don't want to be somewhere and say you lose power to the eSight, you can't enjoy what you're doing. We're also going to get into power management today with Jeanette. So let's go into the topics here. We'll start off here. So we're calling this section eSight Training 101. So the first thing we're going to get into is power management with Jeanette. And Jeanette, I'm going to switch over to your bullet point slide here, and I'll let you discuss power management with everyone attending the session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tyler. Welcome, everybody. So this generally is a general power management little webinar extract for you. And obviously, as with everything, if anybody has any individual questions, you can ask them at the end about this, or you can also ask your coach. So the first tip I would give you for power management is to keep your internal battery charged. Now, I don't know if everybody realizes, not everybody may, but the eSight 4 has an internal battery inside of the head unit, okay? And this internal battery really is what maintains the operating system of the device. It does get its power from either the external battery when the external battery is being used, or in my case, as some of you may or may not be able to see, I've actually got the power cable plugged in to the right-hand side of my head unit as we speak. So once you have a good battery charge in your head unit, once your head unit is above, I'm going to say at least 70 to 75%, 80%, you can actually maintain the charge, generally speaking, if you wish to use a power cable when you're using your eSight. As long as we do recommend that the plug of the power cable is connected to a wall outlet rather than a power strip. You can use a power strip, but we say that the wall outlet is going to be a little bit more reliable in the amount of power that it's giving you. So it's very important to keep that internal battery charged, because once that internal battery has sufficient charge, you're going to find that your external battery is going to give you more power. If your internal battery is depleted, or even if it's like at 50 or 60%, and you're putting your external battery in there to charge up or to keep your eSight working when you've got it on, you're going to find that the power is going to be used up by the internal battery very quickly, and you're going to find, well, my external battery is not lasting as long. I'm wondering why that is, and that's likely going to be the reason why. All right, so that's the first tip I would give you. The second tip is if you want to actually check the amount of power that you have on your external batteries, okay, you can simply shake that external battery, and what you'll see underneath it, at the bottom of that external battery, the bit that sits on the seat of the device, is you'll see a number of lights. And the number of lights, hopefully they're green, will indicate how much power that you have left. You should, if you've got a fully charged battery, you should have 4 green lights. So each light would represent about 25% of power. So if you've got 4 lights, you're fully charged. 3 lights, obviously you're about 75%, and so forth. If you get to a red light, your battery definitely needs to be charged. Okay, so if you're shaking your battery and you've got a red light, that means you really don't have enough power to use that battery. So I would definitely be putting it on charge. And the way to charge your external batteries is using the USB cable that's supplied with your eSight. It feels like a piece of rope. It's a little rough, which is wonderful, because if you have lots of cables, I'm a person who has lots of cables. So if you have a lot of cables and you want to distinguish your eSight charging cable, it feels a little rough, like a rope, like a textured cable. And the small end can plug into the external battery. There's a little USB slot in one side of the external battery towards the bottom on the side, and you can plug your power cable into there. Depending on how low your external battery is, you could maybe leave it for an hour to 2 hours. But if you've got a lot of discharge in there, if it's really only one light, or no lights at all, or red light, I would say you need to charge it for a good, I'm going to say 4 hours maybe. Okay. Now, how to charge your internal battery? We have sort of discussed that a little bit, but I would say you can maintain the charge if your external battery has got about 75 to 80%. You can actually just keep it charged up if you like by using the power cable at the side. But in general, if your internal battery is any lower than at least 75 or 80%, we would say charge that internal battery by putting an external battery into the back of the device when the device is switched off, and leave it for a good 2 to 2.5 hours. Try not to leave it any longer than that, ladies and gentlemen, because if you leave it too long, then it can start to sort of back up on itself. So I would always say, when you're charging your internal battery with an external battery, which is a good thing to do, I would say just leave your external battery in the device with the device switched off for about 2.5 to 3, well, 2 to 2.5 hours. I wouldn't even leave it longer than that. And I would, in any case, just to be on the safe side, I would recommend maybe doing that once a week to once maybe every 10 days anyway, just to keep your internal battery maintained. So that's how I would charge my internal battery. And then obviously, just as I said earlier, maintain that charge on that internal battery to optimize the amount of charge that you have on your external battery as well, to maintain the amount of power that you're going to have. And I would also advise you to keep your external battery, make sure that you change them regularly. Okay, to, if you get a low warning light on your eSight device and you just keep using it, you say, well, I don't mind, I'm just going to keep using it a little bit longer. If it drops too much, that external battery may obviously have a red light, but it may go even further than that. And it may actually, the light may sort of go off altogether. And then it may have trouble recharging. All right, now that does happen occasionally. If you let it go too low, when it says low battery, and you just keep using it, that can happen. If that does happen, this is what you do, okay? You're going to turn off your eSight device. You're going to charge up that battery by plugging in the power cable to the battery, like I said. And then once you've left it for about 2.5 hours, now you're going to unplug that battery from the power cable. You're going to plug the battery. You're going to put the battery into the back of your eSight. You're going to wait until hopefully the blue light on the eSight itself has disappeared, or if you're wearing the eSight, you no longer see a battery symbol or an eSight logo in there. And then you're going to turn on the device. And as soon as you see the room, you see everything around you, you're in live view, you're going to turn it off again. And then you're going to take out the battery, plug it in, and now you have re-registered that battery and it should take the charge again. But to avoid all of that, just don't let that battery go too low once you get a low warning light. All right. I'm just trying to think if there's anything that I haven't covered. I think pretty much the only other tip I would give you is that if you also want to use a mobile charging station or a Mophie battery, some people have a Mophie battery, other people, those charging stations that you can get for mobile phone batteries. If you want to take one of those with you, like you're going to a conference or a big concert or a museum and you're going to be out for the whole day and you've got 2 batteries and you think, oh, I'm going to use those 2 batteries. While you're using one of those batteries and the other battery gets low, you could actually use a mobile charging station to charge up that other battery while you're on the move so that you're never out of power. So I think I've covered everything. I hope I haven't confused you too much. And I think, if anybody else has any comments they want to add, please go ahead.
No, I think that's great, Jeanette. Thank you. You covered everything for power management. Oh, I do see Dick raised his hand here. So let me let's see. Let's allow you to talk, Dick. Ask a question for 1 moment here. There you go, Dick. You should be able to ask your question. Oh, there you go. I think I might actually mute you there. There we go.
Did you hear my question?
No, you just need to ask again. Sorry about that, Dick.
Okay, the question was, where can you buy spare batteries and how much do they cost?
So
go ahead, Jeanette.
Go ahead, Tyler.
So you can get spare batteries through us here at eSight. So if you call your eSight coach, you can purchase additional eSight for batteries here. And the batteries are $225 US or $295 Canadian.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. All right. So next we're going to go into manual focus with Leah. And Leah, I'll let you start off the manual focus discussion, and then I will put on your video.
Okay, thank you. So in the first part of this, I am pressing the context menu button, the context button, which is your second button down, the one with the 3 lines on it. That, to make those selections for changing your modes that way, that is also timed. I do make the comment later on in this part of the video that after you make your last selection or your last button push, you have about 3 seconds before it resets. That applies for the context button pushing, giving that a long press as well.
Yeah, and the other way you can switch when you're switching through the you'll see that in the video. So I will pull up the manual focus video here that Leah did and pull that off. One moment here. All right. Getting a little slow. Don't know why. Oh, as we can see, we are live. So still
We're
happening.
just having some difficulties, ladies and gentlemen, but this is a live broadcast. This is what happens during live broadcast. Perfectly normal.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. So we played a video earlier, and hold on one moment. Okay, we seem to be having difficulties with the video. There's a lot of things right now. Okay.
I
Perhaps
can do it
So,
without the video if you need me to.
What's that, Leah?
So do you want me to do it without the video?
Yeah, if you can explain without the video, please. We seem to have some technical difficulty with the video. Not sure why, because we tested, multiple times before this. But if you could kind of describe things or what you're showing in the video, and we'll have that video posted on YouTube probably in the future. So you can describe, what you're trying to do and show with the manual focus.
Okay, yeah, sure, no problem. So like I said, you're going to be concentrating on your context button, which is your second button from the top, the 3 lines. You're gonna do 2, where'd I go? Okay, there we go. You're gonna do 2 long presses of the context button. Your first press, you'll hear modes filters, switching to modes filters. Your second long press, you will hear switching to image brightness focus. The minute you hear it start saying that, you can go ahead and start changing your focus, which is your up arrow and your down arrow on that directional ring. If you just give it single presses, it will move very slowly if you have a long distance to go. If you press and hold in any one direction, and you can pretty much figure out what direction you need to go, you will start to notice it slowly coming into focus. And then once it gets close to being in focus for you, which is a different number for everybody, then you can start going into single presses of that whichever arrow you were doing. If it goes into focus and then goes out of focus, you've gone too far, and then you can press the opposite arrow to get back to it. Like I said, you have about 3 seconds after a button push before it will go back to your zoom contrast. If you hear it say switching to zoom contrast, you just have to repeat everything over again. So the context in which you use manual focus, you can use it in reading. We here at eSight recommend a book stand. You can get them from Amazon, from Barnes & Noble, any place like that. There a lot of them times they're called like a cookbook stand, and they have adjustable backs, so you can adjust the angle at which they lean. And then they have clips on the front that can hold your pages open. So what you want to do with that is once you put the book on and you're on the page that you want, you have it in manual focus. You have where manual focus is on. So either like a custom station, a custom mode, or your reading mode. And then you're going to zoom in first to where you think it's going to be comfortable. It's probably going to be hard to tell because it'll be fuzzy at that point in time, but just do the best you can at guesstimating that. And then you will do your manual focus until the words, the printed words, the letters are in focus for you. Having it on the book stand ensures that your manual focus is the same from the top line to the bottom line and from one page to the next. If you move your head forward or backward and the focus gets out of sync, if you find that your head was not in a comfortable position the first time around, move your head to where it is comfortable and just readjust your focus. Doing that same steps of long press the context menu twice, and then using your arrow keys to adjust the focus. If you get out of sync with your head with the focus and you liked where your head position was at, then just shift it back until it is in focus. Another way that you can use manual focus is if you are working on a project and you want to focus on that project exclusively. So if your hands get in the way of a project, or if you are screwing in a screw, if you're doing some kind of manual labor of sorts and screwing something in, then you can put the focus on that screw head, and you can, that way it's such a small area that if you move a little bit at anywhere point in that time, you'll lose the focus of that screw head or of your project. So putting it in manual focus to where you can see what you're looking at allows you to be able to look someplace else, use your bioptic tilt to get your screwdriver, make sure you have the right tip of the screwdriver or whatnot. And then you can focus it, you can already have it focused on that screw head when you're ready for it on your project. You can keep your hands from getting focused on. Another way, it's not just for close up, you can do it for far away things as well. If you are looking through a window screen or the front windshield of a car, in the summertime, bugs splattered all over the place. So a lot of times your unit might focus onto that. You can zoom past it and then use your manual focus to focus beyond the glass and beyond the screen to what you are looking at. So
Okay.
that's manual focus.
No, thank you, Leah, and thank you for going into the detail with that. And sorry we couldn't show your video, but you also
Yeah,
on the
that's
video,
fine.
Leah showed showed an example of her knitting and how she moved her hand into view of the focus when she was knitting, as a hand-eye coordination task and making that adjustment there. That was a great explanation. All right. So next we're going to discuss image brightness and screen brightness with Richard.
All right. Well, as Tyler mentioned, we're going to talk about brightness, and the eSight is it has two different kinds. Okay, so we're going to talk about the differences between the two different kinds of brightnesses and some of the situations where you might want to adjust each one. So let's start off with the screen brightness. Now, screen brightness is exactly what it says. It is the brightness of the little screens that you are looking at. Now, in order to adjust that, you will actually open up your home menu by pressing your home button, and that's going to be the button with a little house on it. It's going to be on the right hand side of your remote, in this row of 3 buttons right above your volume and below your navigation circle. So the little house. Give that a quick press. That opens up your home menu. You will go to settings, you will confirm on settings, and then the second item down once you're in settings will be your screen brightness. So all you have to do at that point is you press right or left on your navigation circle, and that will adjust how bright these screens are. Now, when you're done, you just hit your back button twice, and that will clear both of those menus for you. And so, it'll be a little bit of a trial and error, going in and going back out, seeing which is the best screen brightness for you in that given situation. But you're probably wondering, what are those situations? Well, number one, some people that may be extremely light sensitive, they might want to turn their screen brightness down a little bit because it might be uncomfortable if it's too bright. Someone who has naturally dimmer sight, or it's a little bit darker, you might want to experiment with turning the screen brightness itself up. Other than that, if you want to look at like situational things that can happen, because the eSight screens are screens, you'll know that when you're outside, if the sun is shining directly on a screen, a lot of times it will look a little washed out, or you won't be able to see it real super clear. Now, the 4 is a lot better. It's more protected when it comes to that excess light coming in, but it could still come in if it was, you know, behind you or setting sun and coming in from behind. In that situation, you would want to increase your screen brightness, which will help those screens just stand out and be bolder, just like you would a cell phone or a tablet. Okay, so that's really all there is to your screen brightness. You know, it's very straightforward, very upfront with what it does and the kind of situations that it might help you. The one that can be a little bit more involved is something that we call image brightness. And you want to think of image brightness as more of like the shutter on a camera, right? Like this is the brightness that is determining how much light is coming into the camera, and then how you are seeing that in your screens. So for example, your image brightness can help in situations where you know, things are a little dark, your eSight hasn't quite gotten just right you know, image brightness yet, because normally the eSight's going to do that for you. This isn't something that you have to, you know, really think about. But there are times and there are, you know, settings where you can switch that to be a manual image brightness. In those kinds of situations, what you're looking for is when you need to brighten up a room, or if you need to cut down extra light coming from a screen. Those can be situations that you can, you know, adjust image brightness. Even if it's starting to get darker, things aren't looking, you know, quite as good, you're outside, you might want to increase your image brightness like in the evening. Different things like that. It's a lot of trial and error. But just remember, most of the time, unless you have changed this, the eSight's going to be doing that for you. And I'm only talking about those situations where you might have to kind of tweak it on your own. Now, that being said, how do we adjust it? How do we change the setting? Well, the first thing we want to do is there are 2 modes that you can adjust your image brightness in. The first one being your indoor mode has a manual, or has a auto brightness and an auto focus. Okay, so it's doing all of the work for you. But if you need to kind of tweak it, you can adjust the image brightness. Now you're not going to have the full range. This is not the same as it would be if it was switched to manual, but it can kind of let you make some adjustments around the edges. Okay. The way you're going to do that, it's very similar to well, it's pretty much exactly the same technique that Leah just described, with the 2 long presses of the context button. That context button, it's that second button down with 3 lines. You press and you hold it. You'll hear the eSight say switching to modes filters. Once you hear that, you let go of the button, and then you immediately press and hold it again. This time you'll hear it say switching to image brightness focus. Well, instead of going up or down like you would for focus, this time you'll go left or right, and that will adjust your image brightness. So, you know, and like Leah said, you only have about 3 seconds in between before it will revert. So as long as you're adjusting it actively, it's going to remain, you know, there. But if you stop for, you know, 3 seconds or so, it will revert back to zoom contrast. All right, so that is in the indoor mode. And like I said, these are just tweaks. So in that spirit, remember that if you hit your reset button, if you need to reset your magnification or anything like that, it's also going to reset that image brightness that you have tweaked and that you set. So you will need to do that again. Okay. Now, if you are wanting to have total, just 100% full manual control, you can set that up in any mode that you would like. If you want to go in and configure a mode to have that, and Cosmo will talk more about modes, coming up. But what you can also do is you can go to TV theater mode, because that has by default a manual image brightness. Okay, so when you go to TV theater mode, it already has the manual image brightness set, and it's going to have a auto focus. The reason for this is TVs in particular, but screens of all kinds, will put off their own light. If that light is really, really strong, or even if you don't think it's strong, but the camera seems to think it's strong, sometimes people's faces can look fuzzy. Sometimes you'll notice it with lettering, on a scroll. You'll see it with sporting events. Sometimes you'll see that the score will look a little fuzzy. If you see that in that situation, something I always recommend is to try to tweak that image brightness. Usually turning it down just a notch or two is enough to really clear that up. So remember, when you're looking at a screen, it may not be focus that's the issue. It may be your image brightness. So you can always just kind of tweak that. That being said, if you get up and you go to another room and you're going to do something else, don't forget that you are in TV theater mode, which means the machine will not adjust for you. So you will have to adjust that brightness as you go. If you don't, it will stay stationary. And so you'll definitely see how much work the eSight is normally doing on your behalf. But just a word of caution there, to kind of not forget that. Because if you go into a room that is darker, it's going to be darker. It's not going to adjust for you. So that is pretty much the ins and outs of the two different kinds of brightness that we have, and some of the situations where you might adjust those. And yeah, Tyler, do you have
No,
something
that's
to add?
great. No, that's excellent. And a good point. With the image brightness, if you do have it manually adjusted and you do say switch your environment, it won't make that adjustment. So if you go into a room and all of a sudden everything gets darker, just double check what may also, if you're in a manual brightness adjustment mode, that might explain it. So just being aware of that. But that leads us to a next topic from Cosmo, which is the discussion on the mode setting. So Cosmo, I'll pass it over to you to discuss modes.
Woohoo. So you're going to be in indoor mode for 90% of things. That is your standard mode, and you want to keep things simple. Keep it on indoor mode until you come across something that doesn't look good enough, and then your coach can go over with you techniques and what mode to go through for what you're trying to look at. Some people get by on looking at TV just fine on indoor mode. And I do like to set it up to TV theater mode because, like Richard was saying, you can go into configure mode and set it up the way you like it. I have mine configured to manual focus because I find sometimes the eSight works harder than it needs to when you're watching TV. You might be watching something, for example, let me get my camera on. There we go. Tyler, can you take it off the focus?
Hold on one.
You can just spotlighting. That'll do it.
There we go. So I've got TV on right now, and you can see the things walking forward. So sometimes my eSight will go blurry for a second and then come back into focus, and the autofocus is working harder than it needs to. And so I like to have mine on manual focus. And I always like to pause my TV when I'm getting it focused in and dialed in perfectly. Because right here, if you're just watching this guy on a horse in the rain, it's going to be really hard to figure out if you've got a solid focus on. So I like to bring up a something with text, your TV guide, what have you. And then you can really focus in on, like, I'd look at the word Netflix and get a sharp image. And now I'm focused in on just the TV screen, and that's how I like to do it. But a lot of users are fine on manual or autofocus for TV theater mode. To get off of to switch modes, you do there's two choices: a long press of the context button, and you'll hear the narrator say, changing to modes filters, changing to image brightness and focus. And so one press of the context button, and then you can toggle through the different modes. A simpler way might be to just do a short press of the context button. That brings up the live view, and the very top option is what mode you're in. So she'll say, live view menu open, indoor. And now you know what mode you're in, and you can just toggle right and left to get through them. You've got indoor, outdoor, TV theater, reading, and then 2 custom slots. And you can configure those however you like. Like I said, you're going to be in indoor mode for as much as you possibly can. My reading mode, by default out of the box, the eSight has reading mode set to a black and white filter. I don't prefer that. I like to have the control and just turn that on when I like. So I have mine set to normal colors and manual focus. And every time you hit the reset button, it will take you back to whatever that default mode is set up to. So if your eSight is still set up out of the box with black and white filters, and you change to blue and yellow filter, and you're reading, and you hit the reset button, it will take you back to whatever the default is, the black and white, or in my case, normal colors. And now, Tyler, when you power off your eSight, it does go back to the last mode you had it on, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so that's an important thing. If you're sitting down and watching TV, and then you power down your eSight and come back to it a day and a half later, and you say, well, geez, why is this looking kind of fun? Because you're still on TV theater mode. So just that to keep in mind. The easiest way to check what mode you're in is just hit that context button, a short press, and get to the live view, and the narrator will tell you what mode you're in. Any other coaches got anything?
You know, something, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Jen. No, you go
I was going to say, I really like that last that last little item of caution, Cosmo. I like it. I had somebody ring me up one day and say, Jeanette, I can't see anything except like little blotches of white. And I dialed into the eSight of the individual who called me, and they were on reading mode, and they had turned their eSight off. And when they turned it on again, it was still on reading mode, which defaults to white on black. And it doesn't make any sense unless you've got some text in front of you. So if you're trying to look around the room in the images, it just doesn't make any sense at all. So I really liked, I mean, I like that presentation generally, but that last point I think is very important.
Yeah, for sure. And it's the filter, the color filters that you can adjust on the eSight, they're designed for distance. Designed for up close viewing, and not designed for distance. So that if you say set your color mode to say white on blue, and then try to look at it at a distance, it will just be a blue and white edgy mess. And then if you look at font, it will come in, it will distinguish the font, and so forth. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, that the filters, they can actually be turned on. So if you're going into the live context menu and then going to changing your mode, you have to press down to change your filter, and you don't mean to, that can cause a bit of difficulty. But if you ever do that, you always just press reset and you go back to your default, which is great. But no, that's a great discussion, Cosmo, on the mode setting. And do you have any advice, Cosmo, on how people should experiment, like with their individual preference? Like, let's say if someone is trying to figure out, well, do I like to watch TV theater in manual versus autofocus? Or do you have any kind of tips on how to experiment with for anyone like that?
Keep it simple. Always start off with autofocus and indoor mode, and if that's not cutting it for your preference, then slowly try the more manual controls, whether it's manual brightness or manual focus. But definitely having a static image on the TV is helpful, because it's impossible to figure out where your sweet spot is for dialing in that manual focus if it's a fast moving TV show. So just having it paused with some text on the screen makes it a lot easier.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you. All right, so that's all the topics we're discussing for eSight Training 101. So let's just move on to questions. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand again. On a Mac, it is the options button +Y, and on a PC, it's the Alt key +Y. You can raise your hand with any questions, or if you want to just reach out to your coach and have a question, feel free to contact your eSight coach, and they can discuss things in more detail with you. Oh, I see that Dick raised his hand again. One
Hi,
moment.
what's the best way to contact my coach?
Just let me know, Dick. My extension's 409. So you can, you can call, punch in my extension, and that'll bring you to me, or you can email me if you'd like. Should have that contact information, but I can send it to you again.
I do have your contact information. I didn't know whether I had to schedule it through the office or could contact you directly.
No, you can contact me directly, and we'll take care of anything that's going on. And then of course, if we need to, schedule a full-on coaching session, then we can do that as well. But you do not need an appointment for support or anything like that.
Terrific. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Barbara Lindsay has her hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeanette.
Yep.
Barbara Lindsay has her hand up.
Sure. Yep. Thank you, Jeanette. There you go, Bob. You should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, everybody. I have never used the custom mode. When is it useful? I understand the theory behind it, but what's the practicality of the custom mode, please?
Well, it's right next to indoor mode. So let's say if you are, it just saves you clicks, because if you want to get to reading mode, you'd have to click right 3 times, and if you or left 3 times. If you find something that you use a lot, you could set it up as custom too, and then it's right next to indoor. And so then all you have to do is click once. So that's one of the main practicalities, because there's not too many case uses where you'd need something different in that slot. Do any of you coaches have something unique in a custom slot?
Well, it's not necessarily unique, but you can kind of think of the custom slot, Bob, as let's say if you have a hobby that you like to do, and you like to have a certain preference for when you're doing that hobby. So you could say set up your custom mode to be, how the focus you'd like it to be, what your default filters are, and your default brightness adjustment would be, and then you kind of know in your head, okay, my custom one mode is for the hobby that I like to do, and so it's kind of every mode can be adjusted for your preference. So indoor can be adjusted a certain way, outdoor can be adjusted a certain way. But the idea is custom is just modes that don't have a label, so you could set it up. I'm familiar with a patient that say will have like a woodworking hobby, and they kind of have their preferences. So their custom one mode is their woodworking kind of preferences to go there. So that's a way to think of the custom mode. So it can either be like Cosmo said, just a quick way to get to say what you prefer for reading or something like or it's a way to kind of think of it as if you have something you wish to do, and you're like, okay, I know what my reading mode is, I know what my TV theater mode is, and my hobby mode will be custom 1.
Yeah, and I've got people that I've worked with, for example, who really like custom 2. It's right next door to indoor mode. So all they have to do is go into their context menu with the second button down from the top on their remote control with 3 lines, press that, and then they see that they're in indoor mode, and they just arrow to the left once and they're on custom 2. And we've already set up custom 2 so that, for example, when they want to read their computer, a lot of people I've worked with like to read their computer. They like to have manual focus on there activated, which they do have to go in and activate manual focus, otherwise it defaults to autofocus. And they also like to have image brightness activated so that they can turn it up, turn it down, and then they switch to, they, as Cosmo went through earlier, they can go to image brightness focus by pressing the context button twice, pressing and holding it twice, and then they can just adjust it. Whereas on a mode that has auto focus and auto image brightness set up already by default, they don't want to go in there and have to go into settings and activate those other options manually all the time. They just like to go to a mode where it's already activated, and they know that they just have to adjust them like they would a volume or anything else. And then when they've done and they've finished, they just go into the context, press 1 arrow to the right, and they're back on indoor mode again. So that's typically also a way that people like to use it.
So I'm not really capable of getting the full effect out of the manual mode or the manual focus. If I was able to do that though, the way that I would have my customs set would be, I would have a custom mode, like a custom 1. I would probably have that set up with a manual focus, which would then be that would be my, like, if I needed to see through a screen or a car window, it could be the car riding mode or whatever the case may be. But because the only mode that we have by default that has a manual focus is reading mode, which also comes with the default filter, that's why I would set up a custom 1 to have a manual filter. And then if you want to, if you really want to punish yourself, you can set up a custom 2 to have both manual image brightness and focus. So it's like a fully manual mode. The only issue with that is you're going to have a harder time differentiating where the problem's coming from, whether it's an image brightness or a focus. But like for someone like Cosmo who uses manual focus for his TV, then that would be the perfect kind of setup, right? Even with your fully manual setup. So.
Oh, absolutely. And I had a patient that I used to coach a lot, and he adored the custom 2. He was a glutton for punishment, as you said, Richard. He had manual focus, manual image brightness, and for him, this was perfect because he used his computer all day and he used his eSight for his computer, and this was the only way that he could customize the view to exactly what he wanted. And so in order to have that, he would have custom 2 set that way, as I said. So he would just press his arrow to the left and he'd be a custom 2, and then he'd go in and press that context and hold it 2 times to get to the image brightness focus, and he'd adjust both of those, and he'd be a happy camper. And when he'd finished, he'd just go right back to indoor mode as though nothing had happened. But you do have to be very specific type of user to know not to get yourself in a pickle with that one.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. Anyone else have any questions here?
So can you still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I think it'll be fun. I'll set my custom, you said for my hobby, so I'm going to set my custom to swimming, and it'll automatically become waterproof.
For those on the call, just a reminder, eSight is not waterproof. Please do not use it.
And if I
That's
set
not-
it, if I set it to driving, then I can drive a car again. I think this custom is something I really need here.
Let me know how it goes. I wouldn't mind trying it too.
All right. Anyone else have any questions?
So I have a comment.
Sure.
So going back to Jeanette with the battery, if you have problems seeing where the port is to charge your external battery, you can go to the flat bottom, the brass contacts that are on it, and then just, it is on the opposite end of those brass contacts is
Very
where
good.
your charging port is.
Yeah, exactly, Leah. Thank you so much for that. So if you were holding your battery and the bottom of the battery had your brass contacts to the left, if you slide your finger on the bottom, then the port to charge the device is on the right. And obviously, if your brass contacts are on the right, the port is on the left. You can actually feel it on the sides. There's a long side to the battery and there's narrow side to the battery. So it's like a rectangle. And the narrow side is the one that you're looking for. There's one on the left that's kind of smooth near the bottom. It's slightly ridged, but not as ridged as the one on the other side where you're going to plug in your cable. So if you can feel, you can actually feel a little socket there where you're going to plug your charging cable in. But that's excellent. That's absolutely true. Opposite side of the brass little fittings there.
Mhm.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you, Leah.
Mhm.
All right. I don't see any other questions from anyone. So if you do have questions or you think of something, please feel free to reach out to your coach. And as Richard said, you don't need to book an appointment. Just leave a message with your coach and we'll respond to you as fast as possible. Normally it's within 24 hours to assist you. And glad for everyone to join today. Thank you for all the attendees for this eSight Training 101, and looking forward to seeing you next month at our October Vision Central.
Thank you,
everyone.
Salone.
Thank you.
Thank you
See ya.
everybody for
Bye.
attending. Lovely to
Bye.
see you. Bye-bye.